the sectors I'm most interested in right now are Gamefi, we've talked about, AI, DePin, which you've mentioned, real world assets. I would love to see more synthetic products brought online. So I would love to not have to send my money back to my bank account in order to trade the S&P 500. I would love to be able to have a coin that represents it so I can keep all of my coins in my own custody. Things like render are super important because they're going to power all of this, both storage but also rendering power for all of this artwork and everything. And then the last thing that if you want, we can touch on that I'm super bullish on right now is...
Are you bullish on Gamefi? If so, you need to watch this interview with Dylan. Dylan is a collector, an investor, and also the founder of Fat Cats Group, which is a Web3 investment collective. If you check out their site, they have done a ton of research on a lot of very popular NFT projects. And also, Dylan is very bullish on Gamefi. You can check out his Gamefi report here. So very much excited about having Dylan on this podcast and sharing his insights about Gamefi. Now, transitioning more to the game side, the previous 2-3 times that we've talked, the focus has been around what can we learn from gaming and where do we go wrong? And primarily it was around being solely focused on earnings and not the actual experience. What do you think the games got right going into this cycle, and which games in particular are you most excited about?
So the games I'm excited about isn't necessarily what's going to make money. So I think I'm going to avoid specifically saying, well, let me split it like this. The games I'm excited about, I'm not necessarily excited about because I think they're great business opportunities. That's why I'm keep pushing the ecosystem tokens, because I have a joke with some of my gaming friends. We have a weekly panel that we think there's going to be a Candy Crush that's going to onboard the first 10 million people. And that might not be my style of game, but that will benefit us all. But in terms of what I'm actually most excited about, I would say would be other side. I really do want a virtual world or immersive social experience, social platform on the blockchain. I had a great amount of fun and success in Second Life in the early years and then Roblox. So I would really like to see a visually high fidelity space that extends what we do on Twitter and Discord anyway and gives us a fun avatar and lets us group our friends together. So I'm genuinely excited about that. Other than that, I'm genuinely excited about Miranda's. The problem with both of these two is they probably are not going to be ready until the cycle's over. And so in terms of, investing in kind of what do I think we're going to be amazed by? I think we're going to see Illuvium and Metalcore and Shrapnel and a few others in the high fidelity side. But I think this cycle is going to be one step further in what Axie achieved, right? Axie was the inheritor of CryptoKitties, which was a breeding and staking game. Then you had Axie, which is this kind of fighting game. Now Axie has an open world where you can upgrade and interact with your Axie and turn your Axie into a worker. And that's exciting. But I think we're going to see a lot of emphasis on mobile games and easy, repetitive games that people like that are in a loop. And the major difference this time around is going to be a much better understanding of tokenomics so that we don't have Ponzonomics, a much better, bigger focus on actually onboarding and retaining players that are there for a hybrid reason of both being competitive and earning and esports, but also because they want to play and socialize. And we finally have the tech to hide the wires, right? The last time we spoke, the last cycle, there was none of this discussion about things like omni-chain, right? There were hardly the same onboarding mechanisms as MoonPay and stuff. So now we really have the ability, if you go look at things like bigtime, which has done this really well, we have an amazing ability for a person to get on the App Store, download it, go right into the game, and never know there's a wallet involved unless they want to kind of redeem assets or get money out.
I think, Dylan, to your point about a Candy Crush type game onboarding the next billion users, I tend to agree because I think gaming is very expensive to get right. The Call of Duties of the world, those are very expensive games. And for us in Web3, it's still, although there's a lot of opportunity to make money, these startups are very young. And so for them to be able to compete with a game like Call of Duty, the Halos of the world, that's going to be very difficult. So I think simplicity in the type of game that will be launched, I think that is going to be key. I tend to agree with you. And I think this is a big reason why Socialfi for a moment there with Friend.tech did really well. And I think that could come back because the startup cost to that is so much less than a game, but the potential for the return for that application, it's insane. I mean, what are your thoughts about Socialfi? I know it's not gaming per se, but there might be some correlation there.
Well, there's a couple of terms that I like throwing around right now. Gamefi is obviously one of them. I also like Gamblefi. I've been very impressed with Rollbit and others. There's another one about to launch called eBit, because they understood well that, we've got a whole group of native degens over here who like taking bets. So why not gamify that experience, that betting for them, right? The NFT thing is a little bit boring. We don't have all the same perpetuals and stuff. Give them a kind of online casino with crypto and stuff, and boom, that was a massive success. Rollbit went from 0 to crazy numbers very fast. And then there's also gamified social experiences. And that is a kind of more honest response. It's almost the difference between the Oculus and the Apple Vision Pro, right? The Oculus is we need a full immersive virtual world, where you're all in. And Apple's like, well, no, actually, let's add a layer to your experience as you have it. Let's turn your entire room into your monitor. And so similarly, these social gamified experiences is basically saying you're all hanging out on Twitter anyway. Can't we find a way to commoditize you, right? Your inner circle, access to you and stuff like that. And so I think we will see more iterations of Friend.tech. I know there's a few in the pipeline that people are talking about. I think we're also going to see it for communities. I know that we saw during the bear market quite a few subscription models go up via WAP and other things, which was also kind of a form of token gating access. I think we're going to start to see all of these good ideas coalesce, whereby engagement is rewarded, right? There's a lot of, if you also see now with the kind of the whole GameFi thing, instead of using bots, people are weaponizing communities into farming armies to get the social stuff going up, right? Portal was spamming to the point where Twitter was locking accounts, right? That's also a kind of gamified social experience whereby people are farming rewards. So I'm not quite sure its full iteration it would take, but I definitely think we're onto something over here, and it's going to be a big narrative this time around.
There's a lot of technological developments that are happening in the traditional world that trickle into Web3. For instance, NVIDIA and the success that they've had in the AI space. We're definitely seeing an AI boom in terms of decentralized AI and specifically around DePin and the infrastructure that essentially supports this AI movement. But I was thinking that we might see the same thing with the Apple Vision Pro, but we haven't really seen that correlation going from Apple Vision Pro to augmented reality or an uptick in the metaverse. What do you think? Why is there a disconnect versus an AI? There seems to be a correlation there.
I think AI is struggling from a juice problem at this point. There isn't, AI is a novelty at this point. It can do cool stuff, but it can't comprehensively replace a gaming studio at this point yet, right? It sometimes seems like that from the shorts and from the art you can get, but there's so many moving pieces, both from the development side, from the avatars being able to move, from the graphics and everything else, that AI can't really replace a core part of the studio yet. And it also can't speed up the process, right? Because you can make an entire AI world, and people are hinting at that, right? There's discussions of virtual worlds that are completely AI generated. But if you want a polished, high standard that people want to immerse themselves in, AI at this point is not the solution and isn't quite even a helper yet. And I think the reason for that is we're lacking computing power, right? I think, you talked about DePin, that's a storage problem, but even not just the DePin, even just the computing power to give AI the juice it needs to really study games in order to make these experiences, I think is still lacking. And so I feel like we're on the cusp of a lot of stuff, but it might not all come together yet this cycle. And the virtual worlds that are 85, 90% done, they're going to finish their course and build it how they were. They're not going to try and, at this late stage, bring on the robots. One thing, though, that we are seeing immediately happening with AI in GameFi and virtual worlds is the concept of companions. We are starting to see the notion of NPCs and companions being brought in that you can communicate with, right? So I think we're both going to see kind of that virtual butler thing start to happen in some capacity, which, we've seen in Asia before, where you can kind of have I mean, when I was growing up, you could have those dogs running around your computer on Windows. You're kind of going to have a visualized assistant or girlfriend or something. I think that aspect is coming, and I think that's going to come fast. And I think companies or games or coins are doing that service. That's a low entry point, but high impact, especially if you can communicate with it. There's so much loneliness. And then also there's a number of virtual worlds that are talking about AI companions in the games, right? Because if you've got a high fidelity game that isn't an open world, you can't have a lot of people playing. There's always that loneliness factor. You know, we all played Myst and it was empty. But if you can bring in the NPCs that are using AI tech, that's a much more personalized, immersive experience. And I know a number that are already starting to implement that.
Dylan, this has been 30 minutes of just super insightful information and amazing nuggets. Thanks so much for sharing. What are some of your personal initiatives right now? What are you focused on at the moment?
Well, I have the luxury of being de facto a fund manager, so I don't have to build. I just have to do the research and find the people doing the great stuff. So for the most part right now, what I learned from the last cycle is teams matter more than anything. You know, I know it's a silly adage, but, you know, and it's funny because I came from the traditional banking world, so I saw boot camps and VCs and stuff. But if you don't have a team of founders that are willing to take the highs and the lows, because this field is an emotional roller coaster. And if they're not willing to stick it through, no matter how good their product is, it's not going to make it. There's just too much noise. There are too many people fighting for eyes and fighting for dollars. So when I don't see a team that is super hungry, I'm not interested. You know, that's kind of, so I'm looking for opportunities. I'm getting into a lot of VC rounds, but if I don't get to speak to the team, I'm usually getting a skip. And I want to give a shout out to a good example of this. The Portal team, they founded Creeps. They founded Creeps in 2021. It had tremendous highs and lows. At some point, they were the laughing stock because their coin had come down so much, their NFT had come down so much. The core holders were seen as a bit of a cult. There was, you know, the founders, Dom and Joe, were always pitching grand ideas. And most of the NFT space said, you know what, enough. I mean, these guys are living in their heads. You know, they're living in a movie. And then out of nowhere, but it wasn't out of nowhere, they finally came with this finished product of Portal that said, when we were building our own AAA game, we found all of these problems and we solved it for everyone else. And it's been the most successful Gamefi launch possibly in history. Binance had over 8 billion staked. So betting on a team, especially a team that has a history, even if they're coming out with a new product, I think is really important. Secondly, I think forgiveness is important too. It's a very weird situation, only in Web3, that a founder becomes a death sentence, right? You mint a project or you launch a coin, and then forever your holders hold you like indebted. That's not how entrepreneurship works. There's a difference between, you know, fraud or being a grifter or stealing and making a Ponzi and not following through. But a team is allowed to fail, learn from their mistakes, and launch something else, right? Azuki was Zagabon's third try. So those have been a lot of my core lessons. And for me, during the bear market, the most important part was networking. I kept up with a lot of people, and the ones who still got up every day with passion and kept kind of fine-tuning their ideas were the ones I were excited by. And just a final point in this, I remember, you know, this was when Pudgies was at 2 ETH. Luca Netz was on a discussion in Metaverse HQ, and he said, one of the things that he doesn't understand about other founders is if there's still money in the treasury, there's always something you can do. And when he doesn't see a team that has that approach where they're like, well, we've got 50K, everything else is gone, if you will, to shit. What can we do with this? What can we do that enhances, you know, let's make lemonade over here. If he doesn't see that excitement, they're just ready to walk away. That's a super red flag for him. And I'm going to agree with that.
So team is everything, and also lesson to us to be a little bit more patient with some of these teams that we truly believe in. I think sometimes in Web3 we lack patience, and so perhaps maybe having a little bit more patience, we would be rewarded a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of the time it's not the teams that created the hype, right? It's the traders. And then, you know, when these high prices happen, the new people invest come in with these expectations, but the team didn't build that mountain, right? The community that was hyping up the price did. And so often there's a divide between what was actually said and the expectations. Like my own mea culpa, when I look back at the games I invested in 2021, Miranda's basically told me it was going to take a long time. But in the euphoria, you know, I somehow convinced myself by the end of the year, or maybe 12 months, right? The team had never said that. The team never promised I was going to get a polished product. I didn't need to invest in those terms, but in the euphoria, you kind of buy into everything's going to go up, and you do the FOMO. And that's maybe the other point. If you do believe in teams, but you do think things are going to take a long time, watch. And if you miss out on that opportunity, you would at least learn valuable stuff for the next investment. But often by waiting, you can take your capital to things that are going to be a shorter time frame, right? We speak a lot now, for example, in Fat Cats about opportunity costs. There are so many opportunities we want to invest in. Often our biggest question is how much capital are we tying up over here and what else are we giving up? Whereas in the bear market, you didn't have that. There were so few good opportunities. Your focus was a mentality of how do I make sure my capital doesn't lose its value, right? While maybe earning a small interest. So you've got to change that. We're now cash is king, and you should be greedy in your time horizons, whether it be, you know, if you're investing with TGEs or whatever else. So patience, of course, is a virtue, but one should also acknowledge that there is a time and opportunity cost. And if you are a long-term hodler, then yes, go for the best fundamentals. But if you were expecting to trade, be realistic with how long things might actually take.
That's great advice, Dylan. Anything else that you would like to add about Fat Cats or any of your other initiatives?
I would say that we do a number of kind of free public classes. We've token gated our fund, if you will, so we didn't feel the need to kind of token gate our education. So anyone is more than welcome. I'm sure we can drop them the Discord link or something. But we have a cryptocurrency roundtable on Wednesdays with a panel, as well as a Gamefi roundtable a bit later on the same day. And then every day, we also have a few of the counselors sitting together looking at opportunities. We're very much about building in public. We're not at the point of Warren Buffett where us just mentioning buying Coca-Cola sends the market flying. So we still have kind of the opportunity to be able to publicly discuss what we're looking at and why. And we love that because we have found that our biggest win has been kind of building a think tank, right? That especially now it's paying off. People will often come to me and say, Dylan, why haven't we invested in this? And I'll say, well, we weren't following it. There's just so much chatter going on. And so kind of turning our holders into smart brand ambassadors or mini analysts, if you will, helps them know when something to say to us, hey guys, take a look at this. This might be something interesting. And so we invite people to come and join us for these discussions. And a good question is half the answer, as an old Talmudic saying goes. So we invite these questions. We invite people to come and show us, if they will, tell us what they're working on. I would say the sectors I'm most interested in right now are Gamefi, we've talked about, AI, DePin, which you've mentioned, real world assets. I would love to see more synthetic products brought online. So I would love to not have to send my money back to my bank account in order to trade the S&P 500. I would love to be able to have a coin that represents it so I can keep all of my coins in my own custody. Things like render are super important because they're going to power all of this, you know, both storage, but also rendering power for all of this artwork and everything. And then the last thing that if you want to, we can touch on, that I'm super bullish on right now is everything to do with Bitcoin. You know, it's almost funny to go back to first principles, but to see so much development going on in Bitcoin, you know, blows my mind in the happiest of ways. I mean, if we can get L2s on Bitcoin, goodness, I mean, wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement. Obviously, there's a lot of different narratives. I think that what I would do is maybe I'll create a spreadsheet of all the different narratives that we touched on, and maybe highlight some of these projects that we have gone over. And then, of course, all of your links, I'll be sure to include that in the description, so that way people that are interested, maybe they just want to follow along, maybe perhaps they have an idea that they would like to present to you, they can certainly do so. Dylan, thanks again for dropping the knowledge. As always, this was a real pleasure. We'll have to have you come back on really soon because things are moving really fast. So thanks again.
Yes, thank you for having me. And we'll see how many of these predictions play out. I think our I'm in a bit of a state of trepidation. Like I feel that we're in euphoria and we're in this bull market, but at the same time, I'm slight sense of paranoia. Like this is all moving very, very fast. So, I think the next few months are going to feel like a year. And it's exciting. Let's see how it plays out.
We shall see.